and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, a heartfelt welcome from my side and from the side of the co-organizers of this very session, our present, our future. Global citizenship, youth inclusion for the SDGs, peace and security. It's a very broad subject. And I would like all of you, I see young energy in this room, I see many young faces, and we are very happy that we can all welcome you here today. I want to ask you, those of you who believe they can make a change in their lifetime for the SDGs, for peace, for security, please stand up. Wow. Everyone, almost everyone. Some are still seated. I'm wondering whether we can convince them that they can do something. Thank you very much. Sit down. Ladies and gentlemen, let's use this energy. This energy also brought together 3 organizations that have collaborated, actually it's 4, that have collaborated to bring this session here today. One of them is the organization that I am allowed to lead. I'm the CEO of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens. The Ban Ki-moon Center particularly stands for empowering women and the youth. We collaborated with the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty Organization, and as you know, I don't need to introduce you to them today, they are instrumental when it comes to curbing the threat of nuclear weapons. It is about the test ban, and you know, entry into force and universalization are major issues for the CTBT. We too partnered for this event with the Academic Forum of Foreign Affairs Vienna. They are an independent, non-partisan organization that is gathering youngsters that are interested in foreign policy and involving them in fellowships and in all sorts of activities, lectures, to introduce them to the subject matter, but also to instill and inspire them to do something themselves. And I shall not forget CTBTO Youth Group, that is part and parcel of our undertaking here. Lassina Serbu, the Executive Secretary of CTBT, has put a great emphasis on youth involvement, and we are happy that we were able to partner with the CTBTO Youth Group. Ladies and gentlemen, as we want this session to be as interactive as possible, because all of you have a voice, all of you can make a change, I would encourage you to something that is probably a bit unusual. Normally, you're disencouraged to use your mobile phones. Today, I ask, and right now I ask all of you, take out your mobile phones, please. Type in www.menti.com. Why am I asking you this? We will use this. This is not an app you have to download. It is just a website that you log on, and I will give you a code, because you will be prompted to questions where we want to hear your answers, and they will be in real time displayed on the stage. And we want to react to what you think in the audience. So once more, please type in www.menti.com. And type in the code. You will be prompted to type in a 6-digit code, which is 16 29 46. Once more, 16 29 46. We will use that tool later, and I hope that all of you already now have on your mobile phone screens a beautiful display of this session, which is entitled Our Present, Our Future. Before you will be asked your first question, I want to ask Lassina Serbu, the man himself, Executive Secretary of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization, to come on stage and deliver his welcome remarks.
Abdullah. Thank you, Monica. President Fischer, Minister Ouedraogo. By the way, Minister Ouedraogo is young, so he could be a minister, member of the CTBTO Youth Group as well, and the Global Citizenship for Peace. So, Minister Ouedraogo, welcome. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of CTBTO Youth Group and then the Ban Ki-moon Youth Initiative, welcome to this joint initiative with Monica Fröhler, Chief Executive Officer of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizen, for the kind introduction. Monica has framed today's event very well in emphasizing that it is a joint venture between the CTBTO, the Ban Ki-moon Center, the CTBTO Youth Group, and the Academic Forum for Foreign Affairs. Above all, it is the youth present today who have ownership of this forum. We have been working to ensure that throughout the entirety of the SnT 219, the voice of youth is well integrated. But this forum is where young people are front and center, sharing with us their concerns, their views, and above all, their strategies for solution to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and building a world where peace and security reign. I know that Secretary General Ban Ki-moon had dearly wished to be present today. Our thoughts are with him and his family during this sad time. He will always be recognized as the Secretary General who oversaw the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, a groundbreaking initiative that fully comprehends the multi-dimensional nature of development. And I know that President Fisher, co-chair of the Ban Ki-moon Center, fully subscribes to this. The 2030 Agenda, as its core, the determination to end poverty, empower people, and foster peace, while at the same time safeguarding the environment, our global commons. I am of the firm belief that the two great threats facing humanity in this era are weapons of mass destruction, above all nuclear weapons, and climate change. We have within our grasp the means to tackle these threats. Young people in countries and regions around the world are increasingly mobilizing to force policymakers to take action on the climate. Likewise, I'm sure that it is young people that will increasingly drive the agenda on nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament. We have firm evidence of that already where the CTBT is concerned. The CTBTO Youth Group has grown to count some 700 members located all over the globe, including strong representation in countries that have not ratified or even signed the treaty. As you will hear from the CYG members on the panel today, and I hope also from many more in the room, this is a group of people who are fired up to undo the mistakes of my generation. What those of us in position of authority, be it government, ministers, diplomats, senior academics, or leaders of intergovernmental organizations need to do is simple. We must listen. And I know that this is a core belief of my friend, Minister Ouedraogo, who I'm delighted is taking part in today's event. The Minister is an expert on the role of energy, particularly renewable energy, in the climate development nexus. Again, it is often young people who are leading the charge towards access to clean, scalable, and affordable energy. One of the great lessons in the current youth outcry for climate action is that young people's voices can carry great weight. It is no longer simply the case that these people are the policymakers of tomorrow. In many respects, they are the thought leaders of today. Young people today are digital natives who have an intrinsic ability to grasp, package, and amplify complicated messages. One example that struck me this year was the Paris talks that I attended a few months ago, an event whose young organizer described it as a platform for provocative and destructive ideas about the future of humanity. I'm glad to see Kenya from Paris Talk on the panel today. Kenya is a name, but Kenya is not the country. So Kenya is a young girl from the Paris Talk, a young lady from the Paris Talk who is here. So see, to everyone here today, I repeat those aims. Be provocative, be disruptive. We want to hear from you, and we want to be challenged. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thank you very much. The next speaker doesn't need to be introduced, really. He's known to all of us. He's the former president of the Republic of Austria, and he's a beacon of championship for youth and women's rights. We are very happy to be able to welcome on stage Dr. Heinz Fischer, the co-chairman of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens.
Dear Monica, who is moderating this meeting, ladies and gentlemen, dear students, colleagues, and friends. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today and to speak to a great number of young individuals. As I did it 50 years, 60 years ago as a member of the Austrian Students' Parliament or a member of a big youth movement in Austria. The past month, and a young Swedish girl with the name Greta Thunberg have shown that great activism and idealism can take place when we occasionally skip our formal obligations and come together to address what is most dear to all of us, our present and our future. It's a pleasure to be here with His Excellency Executive Secretary Lassina Serbo, who is very, very committed to strengthen youth participation in the fields of peace and security. Dear Lassina, my appreciation goes to you for this great opportunity to co-host such a large event as part of the Science and Technology Conference in Vienna and to fill the Festsaal of the Hofburg with young people eager and interested to contribute to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm glad to see that the achievement of the SDGs is a central topic in the preparatory commission for the Comprehensive Nuclear Testban Treaty Organization. When we talk about sustainable peace, we must take into account the next generation of leaders and policymakers, an effort particularly tackled by the CTBTO Youth Group, whose membership counts over 200 international students and young professionals. I laud the establishment of this group, which is doing an inspiring job, including youth in the nuclear discussions. The CTBTO will soon oversee the international community's compliance with the ban on nuclear testing and will therefore contribute to the global understanding that nuclear science must not be abused to wage war and threaten human and environmental security. My good friend Ban Ki-moon cannot be here today to speak to you, and you have heard the reasons for that. The former United Nations Secretary General has always been a strong advocate of the inclusion of young voices in the decision-making processes that have long-lasting effects on our well-being. Ban Ki-moon asked me to convey to all of you his best greetings and wishes. He would be very proud if he could see the young and ambitious individuals that are gathered here today to engage with us on the topic of youth inclusion for peace, security, and the implementation of the SDGs. In 2017, I embarked on a common endeavor with Ban Ki-moon, and together we founded the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, which was mentioned already, here in Vienna. Our organization is based on the principle that the minds and actions of young people, men and women, are needed to build a present and a future that leave no one behind. By the way, the first envoy on youth in the history of the United Nations was appointed by Ban Ki-moon 6 years ago, in 2013. Ahmad al-Handawi from Jordan was the first to take up the mandate to bring the voices of young people to the United Nations system. Ahmad believed strongly that the right investments in young people can contribute significantly toward attaining the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, Ahmad is Secretary General of the World Scout Movement, one of the world's largest youth movements. He also serves as one of the Ban Ki-moon Center's board members. But first and foremost, Ahmad is a prime example that by involving young people, we can grow a culture of leaders that act for sustainable development, peace, and security in our present and in your future. I remember long ago, in 1953, when I was in the age of 15, we were discussing topics of peace and war and nuclear weapons at an international youth conference on peace and disarmament in Vienna. Some of my close friends who were influenced by that period later became high-level politicians and leaders in Europe. When I look back at the youth movements of my time, I truly believe that young activists had a great influence on political actions against the Vietnam War, for instance, on the peace movement in the 70s, as well as on the negotiations about disarmament treaties in the so-called Gorbachev era. It would be wrong to think that these movements are not important anymore today. On the contrary, it's a fact that the classical confrontation between the East and the West is behind us, but instead we experience many different violent regional conflicts, tensions and threats. So I see youth involvement more important than ever. Modern technology is supporting these movements by delivering different ideas and messages at very high speed across the globe and connecting youth with similar interests. Social networks make coalition building easier, but also gatherings like this one today brings young people together to share ideas about how we can make this world more peaceful. What unites us all is the urge to secure our and the well-being of our loved ones. What separates us is the misunderstanding that someone else's well-being infringes on my well-being. Unfortunately, the latter misunderstanding is a very powerful one. It fosters fear, hostility, and finally, it fosters war. Dear friends and colleagues, recent trends show that the world spent $1.7 trillion last year on militaries and weapons in general. It is only normal that young people unite by stepping in and claiming how much of this money could have been used for education, economic development, for the implementation of the 2030 goals and other reasonable things. Tensions occurring from the development of new nuclear weapons and its testing could be turned into cooperation from joint verification of nuclear disarmament agreements. This could in turn lead to stronger partnership in the implementation of the Agenda 2030. Dear colleagues, in 2050, the Security Council of the United Nations passed a landmark resolution on youth, peace, and security. The first resolution fully dedicated to the important and positive role young women and men play in the maintenance and promotion of international peace and security. For this resolution to be effective, it is necessary for us to understand that there is not only one type of youth. Millions of young people are marginalized due to their gender, religion, ethnicity, or due to disabilities. We must remember that our actions and the vital decisions that we make can affect everyone differently and can have detrimental effects for the people who are marginalized and whose voices are silenced and not heard. Keeping this in mind and making informed decisions that consider the outcome for all people is crucial. So let me come to an end by saying, unless we raise our eyes above the horizon and take action now, we are facing a climate catastrophe. Unless we reduce inequalities between and within countries and reduce nationalism and xenophobia, we will risk war. So please challenge your leaders, your friends, your parents, your colleagues, and even yourselves. Inspire those around you to care about the world we share. You, the young, have the innovative minds, the fresh ideas, the energy, the creativity, the strong will, the modern tools, the motivation to make this world more peaceful and to secure a bright future for this incredibly rich and beautiful planet. You are part of the largest generation of young people the world has ever seen. Use this to your benefit. Be loud, not silent. See the common good and not the personal gain. Look beyond your own group, country, and region. Work with and for the international community. And to put it in one sentence, be a global citizen. Thank you very much.
Danke. This is the moment. We use the tool. We want to know what you retained from these keynotes. Go to your mobile phones and share with us what are some of the buzzwords that you remember from the beautiful speech of Lassina Serbo and the inspiring speech of Dr. Heinz Fischer. Type in what you recall. What are the words that come to mind? Even if it's difficult to reduce it to just 3, but try. The more people who type a word, the bigger it will show on the screen. So you can get an idea of youth seems to be, of course, key. I like that global citizen is mentioned a lot. Excellent. Challenges are there. Peace is there. Nuclear comes up. Climate action. I spot money waste on war. I spot, what else? It's be loud, SDGs. Wonderful, ladies and gentlemen. Future youth global citizen. Excellent. Let me probe you with another query. What would you consider to be the greatest security challenge of our time? Is it weapons of mass destruction? Is it political, social, and economic inequality? Is it climate change, cyber attacks, and please include AI, artificial intelligence, into that? Is it terrorism? Is it infectious diseases or large-scale involuntary migration? Who thinks what? You have 7 points to give, and you can rank basically from first to seventh. So right now in the lead is political, social, and economic inequality as the greatest security challenge of our time. Second is climate change for now. Then only weapons of mass destruction. Cyber attacks slowly growing. Diseases are ranked lowest, and terrorism also is not so high. Interesting. 83, 86, 88. Yeah, almost 100 people. Climate change is catching up. Interesting. They say if you ask this question in Europe, climate change will probably take the lead. If you ask the same question in the US, for years now it was terrorism that took the lead. Thanks for contributing, ladies and gentlemen. Without further ado, let me introduce the panelists of our session. It is young panelists, stellar people who we have the pleasure of talking today about these very issues that we have just highlighted. Let me first introduce to you someone who you might already know, His Excellency Bashir Ismail Ouedraogo, Minister of Energy from Burkina Faso. He himself he was born in 1979, so he's really one of our generation, and he has had an incredible career. Being someone who is really an expert on renewable energy, economics, sustainable development, climate change risks and policies, he has made his way from academia to actually participate in the National Assembly of Burkina Faso, and soon enough he was third parliamentary secretary in the National Assembly and was appointed minister. Please do join us on stage, Your Excellency. Do sit down here. The next speaker I have the pleasure of introducing to you has already been mentioned by Lassina Serbu. Her name is Kenia Hofmeier. She is currently content manager of the Paris Talks, which is a conference, as has been mentioned, for the future of humanity. Kenia comes from the United States and graduated from Northwestern University, and she has a passion for sustainability and social responsibility. She did a lot of things, also writing a book, as you do when you're an active change maker, but she has particularly been instrumental, as I said, to the Paris Talks, and has worked in private sector as much as the public sector, so her angle is a wide one, and I'm happy to welcome her with a round of applause on stage. Kenia, welcome. The next speaker, the panelist that I can introduce to you is Bernd Herrmann. He is the chair of the United Nations Youth and Student Association of Austria, the Academic Forum for Foreign Affairs. Bernd also had a stellar career, still has a stellar career, because he held various positions before he now leads the AFA, basically, and he is particularly engaged in getting more and more youngsters participating in foreign policy, not only from an Austrian perspective, but from a regional perspective. And he's hosting many fellowships of exchanges between Austria and China and other countries. Bernd is, as I said, Secretary General of the Foreign Policy and United Nations Association of Austria, and also Editor-in-Chief of the magazine Global View. Bernd, please join us on stage. Willkommen. The next panelist I can introduce to you is Sahil Shah. He's a policy fellow at the European Leadership Network, and he's also a CDBT youth group member. Sahil works for the ELN, which is the European Leadership Network, as a policy fellow, and he's particularly focused on non-proliferation and disarmament. His key expertise is Iran, and for that reason, particularly for this audience, we of course invite Sahil to share his insights on Iran. Please do come on stage and join us. Welcome, welcome. And the last in our circle is Sylvia Mishra. Sylvia is a research associate at the George Washington University, and she's also a CTBTO youth group member. Sylvia has joined the NTI's Global Nuclear Policy Program at the Herbert Scoville Junior Fellowship in March 2018 and has now progressed to be a research associate at the George Washington University. She has been a visiting fellow at a couple of centers, also the one on non-proliferation in Monterey, right? And she is very keen on looking at the perspective from a Southeast Asian vantage point. She herself has graduated from Hindu College in political science at the university in Delhi. Sylvia, please join us on stage. Welcome, welcome. So you might see that those panelists that we have gathered actually not only represent their expertise respectively, but also the regions of the world. We have Southeast Asia, we have Persia represented, we have Africa represented, the United States, and of course also Europe. So we are hopefully receiving a great insight of all of these global citizens on the subject matters at stake. Let me turn immediately to you, Your Excellency. What would you perceive to be the greatest challenge currently that we face in matters of peace, security, and SDGs? And what would be the African vantage point of that?
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you all for being here. Thank you to my big brother, Lassina, for inviting me. I would say he's my role model because when I was studying in Manchester, I was looking up to him and I wanted to be like him. Thank you for being such a role model for the youth in my country and all over the world. Coming back to your questions, I would say that I would be going from the example of my country and then we can just extrapolate to what's happening in Africa at the moment. You know, peace and security is linked to a lot of problems. When you look at poverty, when you look at rural area, when you look at the movement from rural area to the urban area, and when you look at the movement from maybe Africa to Europe or other country, people are moving from their livelihood and their neighborhood because they are seeking for a better life. Today, we have the possibility to help people, to empower people by using energy. Why energy? Because a lot of things are linked to energy today. You have the correlation between economical development and the level of access to energy. When you look at these young guys who are living in slums or who are getting attracted to terrorism or stuff like that, it's because of a very little thing, because they don't have hope anymore. When you look at these young Africans who are ready, to die in the sea because they are looking at let's say, the El Dorado, which is even not there in Europe or US, because they think that, they will at least have something there. So you need to give hope to these people. You need to help them. You need to empower them where they are. And today, I was listening to a very interesting and powerful speech of the president. He said, the world spending more than $1.6 trillion just for arms. Why in the earth can a country develop a weapon that can destroy the whole world? Why? Why do you need to have in your hand something that can destroy the whole world? Why do you need to spend trillions of dollars for something that can destroy the whole world? Why? If we can help everybody to be happy in his level, in his country, And that's what I'm doing at my ministry. I look at what's happening in Africa. I look at what's happening in the world. Who give the right to a couple of countries to bomb a country, put a mess, and just go back? I don't know. Why do we do that? Why do we need to destroy or to disorganize completely a country, put the mess, and just leave? We are just fueling poverty. We are just fueling poverty. We are just fueling problems. And because of this problem, we are getting into insecurity and we are getting into this vicious cycle of problems. Today, when I have been appointed, within 2 years, we had the possibility to make the equilibrium between the offer and the demand in my country regarding energy. We succeeded to reduce power cuts in my country at a level we have never seen more than 20 years ago. When we arrived, they said we are young, we couldn't make it, we have no experience. But the message that I would like to convey to the youth today is that we can do it. We have the intelligence, we have the knowledge, and I think we are a society where we love each other. Love is the most important than hatred. If we think that what I'm going to do will harm my neighbor, I should think twice. And by using energy today, I can say that the money that we spend to make arms, to produce massive destruction arms, we can use this money to invest in energy. Today, when you invest in energy, you have the possibility to create jobs straight. I would take rural area. In my country, unfortunately, we don't have the control of agriculture because everybody rely on the rain. But today, you have very good technique combined with solar energy. You can empower people. People can grow things, transform, conserve, have a good life, have access to the same electricity that people are enjoying in the city. Today in my country, I would say by next year, we will be having more solar energy in Burkina Faso than fossil fuel.
That's wonderful.
And that's already there.
And Your Excellency, let me ask,
Yes.
because you have pinpointed to energy, I want to ask in the audience, who of you can envision a career in energy to make a change? I asked all of you to stand up if you're a change maker. Now raise your hand if you can imagine that you will be in energy in your lifespan. I see 1, 2, oh yeah, quite a lot. Who thinks renewable energy, wonderful. So Minister, your appeal has been heard.
Thank you.
And I think I have to turn to the next panelist
Yes.
to listen to what kind of appeal you have to the youth.
Thank you.
Kenya, you come from the background of the Paris talks. And I would like to know more about them. How can they actually empower youth to become the champions of change?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the panel. It really is an honor to be here and to be in front of the future, quite literally, with all of you, with the youth. Talking about Paris Talks, for those of you who don't know, Paris Talks is a conference that was created in 2017 that focused on tackling the future of humanity. So just with the title, we already had a big goal in mind and a lot of work to do. But what we did with the first conference was we invited engaged citizens like you all to come to a platform. All we did was essentially create a platform and invite others like you to join us on stage and share their innovative ideas on how we can create a beautiful, sustainable future. And what sprung out from that first season, that first series that we had, was this common thread of the fear of conflict and the fear of the various sources of conflict that will spring about in education, in politics, in medicine. So with our second conference this year, we invited, of course, Dr. Zervo to Paris to take the stage and talk from the CTBTO perspective perspective about the threats that come about with nuclear weapons, and we invited many other people to the stage. But what's really critically important, I think, with Paris Talks is our focus on the engaged citizens. A lot of times, forums like these, let's be honest, they're not open to us, they're not open to youth, to people maybe at the lower rank of associations or civil society, when these are the very people that should be involved and engaged in all the serious questions and topics. So that's what we did with this conference. We invited people from CEOs to founders of their own associations to just engage neighbors and citizens. And what we did was something truly powerful. We were able to create a white paper on the various issues and changes that need to be made to combat the future of conflict in the 21st century. And we're really proud with the concrete solutions that we created, just because it came from a mix of people. It came from people like you, the youth, and from people all at the top working together on their combined solutions and perspectives.
Can you give us an example? What is one of the concrete measures, for example? What would you want these to do on a Monday morning?
Yes. So, for example, one of the working sessions we had was on terrorism and the link with cybersecurity. And one of the initiatives or concrete suggestions that our working group came up with was working with nations, with kind of the United Nations as an intermediary, to establish a universal code of conduct online that will prevent certain things from happening. Because the truth is, and we've heard it echoed and mentioned many times before, these solutions do exist. What's missing really is the cooperation amongst nations and amongst people. That's it. That's at the core. That's what we're lacking.
Thank you, Kenya. Let me turn to the next speaker right away. Bernd, you have been very engaged in youth work for pretty much all your life, and you're leading an entity that has lots of young people in the network. Many are actually gathered here today. What would your recommendation be if someone really wants to involve in SDGs, peace and security? How should they go about it? What could they do?
So first of all, thank you for having me here, and also thank you to CTBTO and the Ban Ki-moon Center for organizing this wonderful conference and the chance for young people to actually participate and to engage within these very important topics. To come to your question, if someone wants to, in my point of view, I'm speaking of course from an Austrian perspective, since I'm running an Austrian association here in Vienna, I would say if someone wants to engage within the SDGs, someone wants to make an impact, we really need to think, what are the SDGs? That's why I usually keep one of those wonderful pocket cards which were being produced by the United Nations Information Service together with the city of Vienna that show us what are the SDGs. And if we look at them, we will clearly see that most of the SDGs are very linked to each other. So basically, if you're interested in one specific topic, you will find out that there are a lot of SDGs being involved in this topic. In my point of view, young people should definitely engage in as many SDGs as possible, but always keep in mind that what impact they can do. In everyday life, for instance, everyone can think what we are buying in the supermarkets, for instance. We can think, do we need a car to go to work, or can we use public transport? So basically, I think it's the very basic things in everyday life of every person that we can ourselves make an impact. Because it's quite difficult if we want to change the whole world within one day or within a couple of years very quickly, which might be difficult to realize, to be honest, and especially for one specific person themselves. However, I think, because you asked me about what the youth can do, what young people can do, I think apart from engaging in everyday life, we need to keep in mind being young does not necessarily mean that we have to be on every stage being involved. I think the youth should be heard, but being young is not the criteria for being part in every area. For instance, being in parliament in Austria is always a big discussion. How many people are below the age of 30 in Austrian parliament. In my point of view, it's not being an argument being below or above 30 years of age. It's if you have something to say or if you have any expertise in any area. And maybe also to focus on young people. The younger we are, the more we are involved in education, even though education is a lifelong process and people should be learning as much as possible during their lives. In my point of view, we need to be good at the things that we are doing, but we also need to keep in mind that we cannot be good at all the things. We cannot be changing the whole world. We cannot study everything. So basically, if we if we want to be good, we should be good in a couple of things and not do 1,000 things at the same time, not doing a couple of internships at the same time, just focus on 1 or 2 things, do them really good, and then make an impact for life.
Thank you, Bernd. Very true. And then, as you mentioned, internships, I do hope that we will eventually come out of this generation internship unpaid, and that we will have internships that are reimbursed, like experts that are working somewhere. So our plea is always that all of the entities are paying their interns. I think this is key to much of our, or many of our lives. Thank you. And maybe another show of hands, who of you believes that they can make a change in politics? Who wants to go? I mean, we had the question of energy. Now I'm asking you, because Bernd said, do involve, be an expert on something. Who of you would like or is already engaged in politics? Interesting, because I think it's almost balanced. Like energy and politics is good. This is excellent. Change makers, we need them in parliaments, we need them in governments, we need them everywhere. Thank you. Sahil, you are on this panel not only as a representative of the region of Iran and the wider Persian region, but also of the Middle East and particularly the nuclear issue, because you have researched about that all your life pretty much. So what is your analysis of the current tense situation that we have in this region, and what can youth do about it?
Thank you so much, Monica. First, before I answer the question, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone, especially Dr. Zerbo and Francesca. I spoke first at an SNT 4 years ago, and at the time, I asked the audience how many people in this room are under the age of 30, and there were 6 of us. And I was making a point that we had 2 issues at the time, which is that statistics were showing that the nuclear security administrations in nuclear weapons states were having a really bad time sustaining their labor force. The NNSA in the US had 3% of their labor force under the age of 30. And then at the same time, in nonproliferation and disarmament discourse, like SNT or other places, I also felt that young people were missing. And the 2 together, I thought, really needed to be addressed. And thankfully, we have leaders like Dr. Zerbo who took that very seriously, and now we have an entire youth forum 4 years later at this SNT. So just wanted to highlight that kind of growth.
Round of
applause.
Thank
you. And all it takes is just one person putting a young person, giving a young person a platform, and Deborah Gordon and Bill Perry, who's a GEM member, did that for me. So I hope other current leaders and former leaders are inspired to use their time to do that as well. On the topic of Iran, it's a very messy situation. I would probably use an analogy of the board game Snakes and Ladders. Unfortunately, there's no winner in my version of the game. So the ladder would be the military escalation ladder that both countries are climbing. We had a few incidents related to tankers, a drone incident, and now within the past 24 hours, we found out that the US also carried out some form of a cyber attack. On the slope side, or the snake side, we have a slippery nuclear slope where Iran feels as though they've waited a year's patience and abided by a non-proliferation agreement that from the outset was meant to be a win-win, but has turned into a win-lose. So in terms of the short time frame prognosis, I hope for stabilization, but there's a very narrow window for diplomacy, because at the moment both countries they've shown their military muscle, and hopefully that means that the leaders can sit down without feeling as though they've been coerced into a negotiation. But the framework of that negotiation has to seem genuine, and Iran doesn't feel as though what the US is presenting is genuine, and that means they're not going to enter negotiations, in my opinion.
Very interesting point of view. You too are a member of the CTBT youth group. So can you tell us more? What prompted you to engage? How come that you're active there?
So I think that what inspired the youth group was the need there's an urgent need to get the CTBT entered into force. And the previous generation has had a variety of diplomatic tactics at hand to try to build incentive structures for the remaining 8 non-ratifying Annex II states to join the treaty as ratifying states. Unfortunately, as time has gone by, the issue has perhaps lost relevance in certain places, and therefore the treaty, to some, has lost resilience. Unfortunately, I think that is a narrative that a lot of powerful people can use so that they aren't held to account. And I think the youth group has, through the power of showing what science and technology can contribute to peace and security, made a really good case of why we need to protect the CTBT, why we need to usher in a new generation that supports not just what the primary objective of the treaty is, but also ensures that we can get that squared away and then focus on how we can leverage and scale up the technologies to provide even more benefits that were never even envisioned to be part of the treaty's externalities.
Let me ask the audience again, who of you would be willing to tell their family and friends or even the wider networks something about the CTBT to mobilize further countries to ratify the treaty? Who has done that already and who is willing to do it? I see some hands. Mr. Serbu, it's encouraging. You have a couple of ambassadors here. This is great. Wonderful. Thank you for your engagement. Sylvia, let me turn to you. I actually made a mistake introducing you because I said Southeast Asia only. No, you're all about the whole of South Asia, which is far wider. So sorry for that mistake. But Sylvia, I would be particularly interested in India. It is known as the continent of massive population growth. It is known as the subcontinent where the caste system is very prevalent. It is also known that it has incredible ICT expertise. Lots of youth movements are happening there. So many of the challenges are opportunities at the same time. And I would be interested in, if you were the advisor, the youth advisor to Prime Minister Modi, what would you recommend to do with that force of nature?
Thank you, Monica, for that fascinating question. But if I may, I initially would want to share my CTBT youth group journey.
Sure.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so happy to see so many familiar and friendly faces. I started with the CTBTO youth group almost 3 years back with Sahil and several of our friends together. We only had 6 to 7 members during that time, and it is so incredible and tremendous to see that we have more than 700 youth group members now from spanning almost from 85 different countries. So I think we have been able to achieve an incredible feat. I was working in New Delhi. This is in 2016, where I actually got an opportunity to come and attend the ministerial meeting. And when I wanted to come and attend and participate in 2016, I was told that I should not go and attend the conference. I was working on security issues, but I was told that I should stick to foreign policy issues, and nuclear policy was too technical and would be difficult for a girl. I did not take no as an answer. I put my foot down and I participated in the 2016 ministerial meeting. I had amazing conversations, and the best thing about the CTBTO youth group and the journey has been so gratifying because I've learned from my peers over here. With several of them, I have co-authored papers, I have co-presented, and what is incredible about the organization is that we always have mentors who are willing to shape and nurture our thoughts. So a big thank you to Dr. Zerbo and also Francesca for being wonderful mentors to so many of us. Talking about South Asia, I would like to start by saying that we recently had our elections, general elections, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi won with an overwhelming majority. I see that as a positive sign for the Modi government to introduce more decisive actions towards peace and security issues. Looking at the Sustainable Development Goal of 16, which talks about peace, security, and justice, it is important to note that South Asian security is fragile. We have border disputes with China and Pakistan, and therefore if the Modi government is able to initiate decisions which contributes to better relations with both its neighbors, that would be good for the development for the region. This is happening at a backdrop of erosion of arms control agreements. The US-Russia arms control efforts have been on the fray, and competition and rivalry are not only limited to the nuclear domain, but also spreading to cyber. So there are several different threats right now, and it would be good for the Indian government to take the initiative and look at bilateral confidence-building measures with Pakistan. Both India and Pakistan have previously agreed on several confidence-building measures, both military and non-military. I think the stage is set for another round of conversation on peace initiatives between India and Pakistan, rather than outsourcing crisis management efforts to external players. It would be in India's interest to take the lead, take the onus, and have secure lines of communication and bilateral dialogue with Pakistan. And in this context, I think it is important for me to mention, because I've written about it and I always take the opportunity of every platform I get to talk about how India and Pakistan should look at joining the CTBTO's international monitoring system as a confidence-building measure in a multilateral mechanism, as a multilateral effort. Both the countries have committed to not test nuclear weapons. By joining the CTBTO and hosting the international monitoring system in its territory, both the countries would be willing to indicate that they are responsible stewards of their nuclear arsenal. So even if they are unable to discuss and engage in dialogue bilaterally in a multilateral effort, I think it would be a good suggestion. And the second, and something which I feel is very important, is the focus on nuclear non-proliferation education and disarmament education, and involving the youth and shaping the next generation on nuclear policy issues and disarmament issues. I think that is one initiative that governments in South Asia would need to take seriously.
Education surely is big. I mean, all of us are dependent on good education to make a mark. I think those that are in the room here with us, we are the privileged ones already. We have had our degrees and we earned them. We have the opportunity to go to universities, but that still is a major, major challenge. Now with ICT coming in and with the new ways of communication, you alluded to cyber as a threat, but also as an opportunity. You alluded to new channels of communication. What do you think could really alter the ways of operating between Pakistan and India, potentially even steered by the youth, when you're thinking of the new tools of communication? Is there something that can be done?
One issue that I am really concerned about is the maritime security challenge when it comes to nuclear issues. Both India and Pakistan are now shifting their nuclear weapons at sea, and they're developing their second strike capabilities. Up until now, South Asia have had a recessed state of deterrence, which meant that the nuclear warheads were dematted. But when you put nuclear weapons at sea, then the nuclear warheads are operational. And in that backdrop, India and Pakistan do not have any naval nuclear confidence building measure. One of the efforts that both the governments of India and Pakistan should ideally take up is having conversation on naval nuclear issues. So discussions around how, what should be the way forward for both the countries, as and how they are shifting their nuclear weapons at sea, should be a conversation that needs to have had with utmost priority.
Let me switch to you once more, Sahil. In the case of Iran, how can youth involve? How can they be part of the discussions that are currently now going on, JCPOA being in danger to fail, really? What could youth do? Is it writing motions? Is it appealing to authorities? What would it be? Is it protesting in exile?
I think it's all of those things. I think one of the most powerful things that youth can do is to really take control of the media market. In this day and age, we can really push forward either a facts-based assessment or misinformation, disinformation. And I think what young people need to do is take the risk levels right now very seriously, educate themselves, and really appeal to those who are in power based on facts. And with the JCPOA, we see that the President of the United States has said that this agreement will lead to Iran obtaining nuclear weapons. And if one doesn't try to counter that kind of logic with the actual technical details of the agreement and how that's absolutely not the case, suddenly that agreement is seen as a failure from the onset. And we can't really afford for that to be the case with agreements like the JCPOA, but also the CTBT. If one person comes forward and says that actually covert low-yield testing is occurring, all of a sudden it could seem to a lot of people that suddenly the treaty's relevance and resilience, and therefore the technical capacity of the organization, isn't what it actually is, which is quite strong and able to detect quite low-yield tests. So it's definitely an educational issue, but to be anti-war, which is the point at which youth need to be protesting at the moment on the Iran file, also means to be pro-diplomacy. And that means to really figure out what agreements have been put in place, what international organizations are present, and how do we preserve the sanctity of those things? Because we really need to fold this from being a bilateral issue back into being a multilateral one, because it is a global security issue. It won't just affect the US and Iran if something is to go wrong.
Absolutely, very wisely spoken, true. Same goes for Africa. Let me turn to you, Minister, again, because Africa is not only an affair of the continent, it's not only African. Everything that happens on the continent has not only massive effects on the whole globe, but it also has spillover effects. Energy is surely key. So what should youth do? What can you encourage youth to venture into to support the developments into a positive direction?
I think we should learn from others, from other failures. You see, actually, we don't really have the same problem in Africa like in Europe or America or Asia. You look at the population where you have sometimes some country where 80% of the population is living in rural area. And sometimes you have like less than 5% of those population that don't even have access to electricity. So the paradigm are a little bit different. So what I'm saying is that we shouldn't take the same path. We should take a cleaner and a better path. But energy is really key to everything. Even when you look at nuclear energy sometimes, you have some countries that are saying, no, we are not looking into a kind of weapon, but we are doing that because it's for civil purpose. I said, you don't even need to go through that. Today, for example, when you look at solar energy, you look at wind energy, you have the capacity to get the same amount. You have some countries like Germany, like other countries, that are even dismantling their nuclear power because they have more solar energy, more wind power. So I said it's even not necessary to go there. That's my view, and that's the message that I'm conveying to the youth. I said we need to have our voice heard. We need to get engaged. When I was getting engaged in politics, they said, it's not good. It's for bad people, and so and so. And say, if good people don't do politics, bad people will do politics, and they will bring bad politics. So that's what I say. If the youth doesn't do politics, the other guys will do the politics, but the youth voice will not be heard. So my message is that we all need to get engaged because, like somebody said this morning, in 40, 50 years, some people in this room are likely to be still on this earth. So you are more responsible of what's going to happen than those who are behind. So I said you need to step in. You need to take responsibility because your kids, and your family, they will still be around in a couple of years, and you have the responsibility to protect the earth. And we have so many possibilities. The technology is so advanced in terms of energy, in terms of security, that we don't need to go into this dangerous path. We have so many possibilities. The youth, they are so innovative. They have so many good ideas that we need to have our voice heard. You need to be in the government. You know, for example, I'm the youngest member of my government. We are not that much in the government, and it's not good. And I hope that in other countries, you know, many youth will be ministers, so that they will take good, you know, policies that will protect the health, but good policies also concerning the families and our lives.
May I ask you, what's the legal age of voting in Burkina Faso? Like, what's
It's 18.
18.
Yeah.
And do you know statistically how many aged that young actually do vote and participate?
You have in the population, you have between 75% of the population that are young.
Yeah.
75. So that means that if the youth decides, nobody will be elected in the country without their voice. But all the time, they don't even show up to the polls.
And why? What do you
Even
think?
me getting elected, it was not easy for me to be elected like an MP.
Yeah.
I even didn't get the support from the youth, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You know, when I look at the polls, those who voted for me, I was sorry, but you know, the youth were about 25%. So you see, we need to get engaged. If you are not engaged, you have good policies. A journalist in my country said the problem is not the cynicism or the hatred of the bad people. No, it's the inaction of the good people. You see, because if you are good and you know you have good ideas, you have things to say, and you say nothing, you are inactive, that's the problem. Yeah. It's not because the other one is mean, he's doing bad things, but the good guys, you need to step up. You need to give hands, right, because it's together that you can make change. And unfortunately, sometimes the youth, that's our problem. So I would ask the leaders in this room, you know, please, you know, try to advocate, you know, for the other guys to get engaged. You are already engaged. You are already doing the good things. But 700, 1,000 people, we are not going to move anywhere. We need to rally more people. We need to get a mass of people behind us so that we'll get things moving. But if it's just we will say, you know, 700, 1,000 people, we'll do seminar, we'll do conference, we'll talk good talks, but nothing will move. You know, we need to get in the ground. We need to be engaged. We need to do things. We will not be able, don't think that somebody will be able to just change the whole thing. But if somebody do small things, if we put the small things together, we'll do great.
It accumulates.
So don't wait for finding this great opportunity of doing great stuff. Start doing small things. Start empowering people and helping them. And you will see, you know, within a couple of years, we will do great.
Ripple effect. I like that one. Probably the audience knows half of the planet is below the age of 25. Half of the planet. It's the biggest generation that we have ever seen. Youth generation. Half of the planet is women. And in our panel, it hasn't yet come up so much, but I think much of the potential that we have alluded to also lies with mobilizing women, who are often the unheard heroes, the unsung voices. So let me ask you, as a woman to a woman, Kenya, you have worked in several sectors. You have worked in the business sector, you have worked in the public sector. Where do you see, as a woman and as a young woman, have you made the most impact, and why?
That's a good question, actually. And as a woman, there were unique struggles in all of those spheres, public, private. They don't not exist anywhere, they're just different. But I'd say where I made the most impact is where I chose to make the most impact, because unfortunately or fortunately, as a woman today, you have to be the driver of what you want to do. You have to go for the opportunities, and you have to make that change. And I think the good news is that women today, and youth today specifically, we're great mobilizers, we're great connectors, and we have seen the results of inaction, as you've talked about, and lack of engagement and lack of just going for things that we think need to be implemented. And so when something isn't being done for us, we have to go and take charge and do that. And that's precisely how our conference Paris Talks came about. No one handed us money or handed us a platform. We had to go out and create it and build those connections and build those networks. And luckily we had the tools and capacity, and more so the desire and and the will to do that, to make that happen. And so, yes, going back to the question, I think where I made the most impact is seeing where that impact needed to be made and going for it. I know a lot of women leaders in the world have talked about leaning in or bringing a chair to the table when there isn't one for you. And I think that's great. And I think that unfortunately is still true because sometimes the chairs are still missing. But it's good to see platforms like this where we are included. And now as women, we're getting more opportunities. We're getting more in the limelight. Is our opportunity to bring women up with us as well and youth with us as well to just amplify the change that we're making. So I see that as my personal duty wherever I go.
That's wonderful. Me too. I definitely see that as one of my duties too. And I know, Bernd, you do too. I mean, your whole cohort is constituted of men as much as women. But let me ask you, away from that kind of consideration, what would you perceive as the greatest challenge that we currently have on this globe, maybe even focusing on Europe? And because you said we should be experts on one thing, do one thing right, be really good in one thing. So if you could advise, let's say, your children eventually, what would you want them to venture into?
Thank you for this question. It's a very good one, actually. I think I would like to come back to education. Education is one of the key points that everyone faces in the world. Education leads to good jobs lead to welfare leads to a better world. So basically, the more qualified we are, the better it is for everyone. Maybe I would also encourage everyone to visit other countries. I think if some of the world leaders would have had the chance in their young years to visit other countries, there might have been less misunderstandings between countries, between cultures, between the people itself. In my point of view, we should take the chance, if we're having the possibility to do so, to meet people from as many countries as possible in the world in order to understand their attitudes, their culture, their behavior, how they are running their countries, they're running their lives. For instance, a very interesting, also speaking about youth, a very interesting fact is what actually defines a young person. What is youth? What age group is youth? For instance, when we established our program, the Young Leaders Exchange Program, Austria with China, we had the first year a big, more or less discussion, what exactly is youth, who is going to be invited? Is it people in their low 20s or is it people in their 30s or maybe even the 40s? So basically we see people from different countries, China and Austria in this example, have different views of what young people are. And you can only find out about things, very basic things like this, if you actually talk to other people, if you meet other people, if you visit other countries. That comes back to the education point that I think our biggest challenge in the world, in my point of view, one of the biggest from European perspective, is definitely education, which leads to health systems, which leads to inequality issues.
And then let me ask you, Bernd, are the schools that are currently available, the universities, are they really preparing the next generation? Are they teaching the right things? Are we learning the right things? Or does that too have to change?
I'm not an expert in university and their curriculums. However, I would say it a little critical, as I am. A lot of things that people are learning in theory is very, very good for theory, but not necessarily useful for the practical aspects of life, for the practical aspects of the jobs they are in the future doing. In my point of view, lately, I've been working now in this area for almost 10 years. It has been a slight change of people, what they are doing. Recently, for instance, when I had my job interview, it was a good CV to have maybe 1 or 2 internships within your career, and afterwards you would get a job. Nowadays, people are doing 5 or 6 internships within 1 year, 1.5 years, and doing more and more. It's quite, if I would show my CV to get a job now, if I was a couple of years younger, I would never ever get a job in my point of view. At this time it was quite a good CV. Nowadays it looks like that often quantity counts more than quality.
That might be a problem, but what you're mentioning actually goes very much in line with the things that have been mentioned, because it's people that are active, that are engaging in something. And again, let me ask the audience, who of you had to do an internship already? Who is currently an intern? Please raise your hand, and maybe we can have the light in the audience. Okay, a lot. Who of you is hoping that this internship is actually transiting to a job? Several as well, of course. And then let me ask you as well, do you have the feeling that the universities, the schools that you have attended, actually equipped you for the job that you are seeking? Do you have this practical relevance linkage that you experienced? Raise your hand if that is the case. So has the school really equipped you, the university, to do what you want to do? Okay, test the other way around. Who has the feeling it's completely divergent from what they want to do? It's about even numbers. I think it's 50-50 really in the audience. So that means definitely there is need for us to reform something. And again, the question would be, how can we best do this? We have major challenges all over the globe, and yet we are all sort of stuck in our own field. And I think, Bernd, you alluded to a couple of key points. Meet other people, exchange, be active, do vote, do take charge, even in government, and try to be a change maker, as you probably already are. Let me ask you, turn to your mobile phones again, and I would like to encourage you to pose a question to the audience. Ask us anything. And we will see what questions come up, collect some of them, and then put them to the panelists. Yes, while you're posting your questions, I have an internship.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that I think that the fantasy of inclusion is really dangerous sometimes because it's actually a technique of exclusion. So if we put a lot of young people in a room, it oftentimes will lead those who convened those people to feel as though they've checked the box and that they've done the work that they need to do to be inclusive. But one of the unseen things that are not visible immediately from just looking at a group of people are what kind of financial security somebody has. So the issue of inclusion really should be about equity, because we definitely, when we look at things like internships across the map, many people have to take those internships as unpaid opportunities. And if that's the case, then from the onset of training and education, you have a huge wealth disparity in who is able to actually take some of these kind of opportunities. And from there, those disparities grow even further. So again, the fantasy of just falling into this trap of inclusion and youth involvement, it always has to be put against real metrics to ensure that it's not being used as a tactic of exclusion of certain people.
Absolutely correct. So I see the one question that has gathered most approval is, how can you get the US to ratify the treaty? Well, that's squaring the circle, but maybe creative ideas come up. So if anyone in the panel wants to take that question, please feel free to respond. Anyone? If not, I will ask the audience back, because they might have ideas. The question, how can you get the US to ratify the CTBT?
No, I think when you look at the way US is behaving, lately you have seen a lot of things. Even the Paris Treaty, they pull out, and they think that they are developed and they can do whatever they want. I would say at the moment, if you look at the President Trump, you have no possibility at the moment, he has been voted based on something. He said a lot of things, and that's based on that he has been elected. So I would say we need to focus more on those who are on a good path, wait and do the good example, and we'll see what's going to happen to the US. Because at the end of the day, we will be spending a lot of time, we will be spending a lot of money, more energy to trying to convince somebody who is not even going to listen to you. Sometimes it's even more to just keep quiet, leave him there, do the right thing, and we will see. Because the one thing I see in what's happening in US is that US is powerful. US is spending a lot of money. I would take the example lately. We had a conference in Portugal, and we talked about the specific case of what's happened in Libya. Mm-hmm. When US and then the coalitions bombed Libya, we took out a dictator and we leave a complete mess. And at the end of the day, what's happened? The whole terrorists, the whole armament that were in Libya just went down to West Africa. So I would have been happy if the other countries didn't follow the bad example of US. So I would say, if US is having a bad example, we need to convince those who are not going towards that. Let's have the good example. And I always say it, if you have the good possibility, if you are in a good path, let's secure that. Let's go with the people who have the positive mind, and with that, we'll be able to do things. So at the end of the day, I said, let's the youth in US get engaged in politics, or let's the youth in the other country get engaged and do the right thing, and I'm sure your positive action will impact the others. And those who didn't vote, or those who could have changed the vote in US, will vote another president who have a bright view, and this guy will come and change things.
Or the lady.
Of course, the ladies, we count on you, because I do believe that if we are more ladies in power, we will see a lot of change in the world. And that's what we are doing. We need to empower the ladies, we need to push them, we need to help them, especially in the developing countries where we see that we need to make more effort, to help ladies, to empower them. Because when the lady have the capacity, when she has the power, she take care of the family. And this way of thinking, taking care, when she's head of state, she will make sure that she will take care of the country, she will take care of our planet.
Correct. So mobilize the youth in the US and elsewhere. Anyone else who wants to respond to that question, maybe from the audience? I see a hand up. Please, microphone. Do we have a microphone that we can bring to the gentleman in the 1, 2, 3, 4th row? Thank you, Julia, for running for that. And then Viola, maybe we can have another question afterwards. Please. What's your idea? How can we get the US to ratify the treaty?
Thank you. I'm Ilya Kursenko from the CTBTO Youth Group. I study at Kazan University in Russia, and my recent thesis was on the history of how all of these arms control treaties were ratified, the long struggle during the Cold War to come to an agreement. And during my research, I've realized that the most progressive steps have been taken during the tensest of events on the international arena. Particularly the Cuba Missile Crisis made the two political leaders come particularly to the person-to-person communication, and they both realized how dramatic and tragic the nuclear power is. And that's when we reached the agreement. Though what's also very important is the strong support that has been provided to the treaties and to the disarmament movement by the academic community and also by the civil society, both in the USSR and in the United States and in Europe and all over the world. And I asked exactly the same question 4 years ago when I was in Vienna at my first event that was related with CTBT. And now I'm a little bit ashamed that I have ever asked questions like that, particularly because I think it's not only the case in the United States. The case is in collective security, which is a very tight and complex issue. And I think that what CTBTO is doing currently is a very correct thing. It expands its influence and impact into the areas that contribute to the security, and it leaves the areas that are a little bit in the dead end at this moment. That's why I really appreciate the approach to the Sustainable Development Goals that this conference takes in particular. And I think that the CTBTO has so much potential for expanding the impact to collective security that one day, I think not only the US, but all of these 8 countries will come to one table and ratify the treaty.
Right, hopefully, thank you. Another comment, I saw another hand up somewhere to this very one. If not, you wanted to comment? Please, go ahead.
I think that this is a very important question, because the US is often seen as a loggerhead and who is going to block any progress on the treaty amongst even the other 7. And I think with the US, we've seen in the Obama years, there was a huge sense of optimism that Obama would definitely carry through on a lot of these kind of ideas that he put forth in Prague in 2009. We're now 10 years on, and one of those things was the CTBT. I think that, you know, with each country, you have to look at who are the pressure groups are and who has a vested interest in stopping arms control from progressing. And we have to educate legislators in particular who don't have the most up-to-date knowledge on something as specific as this. And I think what can be done in the wake of Trump is to really have the presidential candidates who are currently having to make statements one way or the other in favor of the JCPOA have to come out and actually go through all of America's nuclear commitments, including the CTBT, and say exactly what they will do to actually bring progress on them.
Information is key. That's very true. We have another question that got a lot of thumbs up that seems to be of interest to many. How should we reach poor, uneducated people who are not interested in global citizenship? Broad question, but very good one. Who wants to dare? Yeah, Kenya?
I think I can take that one.
Go for it.
We'll try. I see a lot in this question already. How can we reach the poor and uneducated people who are uninterested in global citizenship? Already, we see there an answer. Education is at the core of it, and my colleague on the panel here has talked about the need to get into these critical places and educate people just on their rights, on the state of the world, the issues that affect them, from climate change to security to health and all these other issues. And it's really our responsibility at the forefront as governments, as civil society, to make sure we take care of one another and our neighbors. But also, when I look at this question, I kind of want to ask the question back, how do we know that poor, uneducated people are not engaged in global citizenship or are not active global citizens? Because sometimes we find those are exactly the people who are doing the grassroots civic citizenship work that is required to move us along. A really interesting example that I saw when we were actually creating this year's Paris talks and the future of conflict, I wanted to see where did grassroots, just average Joe communities come together and make huge change. And there was an example in my home country, the United States, in California specifically, where the state had a long history of gerrymandering. And for those of you who don't know what it is, it's when cities and counties literally redistrict voting maps so that certain areas get less funding or less resources, and politicians get voted into one place or another. It's a big mess. But basically, these average, poor, maybe basically educated people came together and said, as a citizen coalition, we're going to redistrict the map because our elected officials are not doing that. They did an entire proposal, presented it to all of the elected officials and associations in the state, and that was actually enacted at a state level. And these were just the poor, average neighborhood people who didn't see that they're doing anything special, but just doing something out of necessity. So in that question, I see two things. We need to go out there. We need to be the mobilizers that we are as youth. That is one of our key assets, I think, moving forward. And also turn that question around and see, is it that they're not engaged, or is it just that we're not helping them get the platform and the resources and the voice they need to make these changes?
Yeah. Thank you very much for that comment. You too want to comment on this one? Please.
Yeah, I would like to a little bit comment about global citizenship. It means being a global citizenship means that your action here can affect somebody who is in the US or in Africa. But when you look at those who are, for example, destroying the climate, they are more than educated. Okay? It's not about education. They have you see some big corporation, big company with big CEOs, with PhDs, and they destroy the Amazon. They destroy, they will produce energy based on coal. When we have the possibility to produce with solar energy and wind and sustainable energy. So I would say we need to redefine what we are looking in this global citizenship. It's not about a fancy word. It's about what you are doing. You might be uneducated. You might even not go to school. but you know how to protect the environment. You know what to do so that you will leave a better world for tomorrow. But you can even get a PhD. You can even do Harvard. You can even go to whatever.
Yeah.
But the way you are living, the way you do things, you are not a good global citizen. So, I mean, we need to look at what shall we put in this. How are we even going to educate the educated one? Why? Because it doesn't mean that you just go to school or you have a diploma, you have a degree, that you are educated. We are living in a world that is interconnected. We are living in a world where your action is affecting your neighbor. That's the education that we need to give to each other. That's the education that we need to teach.
Very true.
It's not just going to school and being able to resolve an equation or being able to get, no. This type of education that we should push is another type of education so that we all live a better world for tomorrow.
Well, I could not agree more, and even having had the opportunity to be with Ban Ki-moon in the past couple of years, this is exactly what he says about global citizenship education. It's instilling a mindset that goes beyond borders, where we are not talking about America first, any other country first, but we are talking about the global challenges first and how to tackle them. I see a new question came up. Let's look at that one. Do you think we are really trying to solve climate change? 17 thumbs up. Well, I hope so. Who wants to take that one? Anyone volunteering to answer that one? I see even a hand in the audience.
Climate change is my...
this is your...
it's my,
your excellency.
my thing.
Go for it.
No,
I
would say climate change, we need to accept to change first if we really need to have an impact on climate change. If we still want to have our fridge, which is full of food and everything, you know, where you will empty it, you know, after 1 month and go back again to buy it, you might even come to conferences, but you are not going to really act for climate change. But what I have to say also is that we reach a certain level where even if we stop now, we are still going to have impact, you know, on the climate. We do have people who are trying to solve this problem. We have a lot of people, like you guys, like here. But we have also people that have the possibility to impact on that, who are still not doing the effort. So I would say, let's be careful each other on the way that we are doing, you know, on our daily life, and try to do your best. But I would say the aggregate at the macro level, we have some countries, unfortunately, that are not doing the effort. But I think if we really need to tackle the problem of climate change, it has to go into the pocket. You need to have compulsory rules and stuff so that if a country is not behaving good, so he need to pay at the end of the day. If we don't have a mechanism where people need, you know, to put some money, you know.
So rather a punish than an incentive.
Exactly. At some point we need to do that, you know, because you have other people that are doing things and it will impact the others. For the moment you don't realize it because, okay, fine, you know, you don't rely on maybe agriculture, you don't rely on fishing, or you don't see the impact. If you are in Tuvalu or if you are in other countries, you see that the sea level is rising. And even day after day, you know, you have some people that have to move from area because, you know, you cannot stay there anymore. This country, they know that the climate is changing. But you have some others that don't realize it. So we need to be more fair. And we need to have intergenerational fairness also, because, you know, we need also to understand that we owe to the next generation also what we are doing now. Okay, we shouldn't be selfish and say, okay, maybe, you know, it will be in 100 years, but no. Other people were in this earth and they leave it, you know, in a good shape for us. we have also the responsibility also for the next generation. So that's
very true.
That's something I would like to highlight.
Ban Ki-moon always says we only have a plan A, we only have a planet A, we don't have a planet B, we don't have a plan B. And the plan actually, my dear colleagues, is the Sustainable Development Goals. That is our plan, as good as it gets. I saw a hand of a lady here. She wants to comment on the question, and I see another hand here in the first row. Please, let's have 2 more comments on that.
Hi, thank you so much for letting me speak here. My name is Natalia Valeria Müller. I am an international development student at the University of Vienna, and I'm also part of the Academic Forum for Foreign Policies. So thank you for organizing this great event. I have to agree on basically everything that His Excellency has said. I think when we look at this question, we have to keep in mind, who are we? We have on some part the leaders that are highly affected, whose countries are highly affected by climate change. There's the leaders that see the population, the villages erased, the people moving in high numbers, and it is impacting not only lives, but economic growth, and everything is so highly connected to one another. And on the other hand, we have countries that are contributing so much to the actual climate environment, the climate emergency, and they think mostly, which I find most problematic, about the short-term commitments to economic gains, which is the biggest problem of our time. We cannot have economic gain when we don't have a planet. It's as basic as that is, and I think a lot of people in charge are failing to understand that, and it's impacting most of our futures. I mean, I'm almost 30, but I'm still thinking about all of the generations that are before me and are still coming after me, and it's a simple debate, but I think a lot of problem comes also with putting people in charge who don't see that far into the future.
The long term.
And yeah, I have too much personal interest in politics and not enough interested in the things that actually matter to us.
Thank you for the comment. Another one in the front row, please.
I'd like just to comment on the issue of climate change. And first of all, I'd like to thank for this discussion with the youth. It's very important. Some of us won't be there probably in 25 years from now, but some of these will be probably less than my age now. So definitely it's very important that they understand the importance. At the global level, in terms of education, you see less going towards STEM education. At the global level, even in Europe, etc., you don't see that. Although the jobs of the future will be more STEM jobs. And also understanding the world in which we live and making a huge difference is understanding that science technology is very central. Even just understanding social dynamics and social sciences is very central. Coming back to the issue of climate change, global warming, even if the countries in the world, China, the United States, and others who are probably polluting more will stop that now, still we will have challenges on the climate issues in the developing world, in particular in the tropics. Most of the poor are concentrated in the tropics. And in the tropics, as the minister said, the energy of the poor is the wood. So they will cut the trees, they will cut the grass, and use as the energy. So on a daily basis, somewhere in Congo, in Rwanda, in Burundi, in whatever, in Brazil, somebody is cutting the tree and is using that to cook. And that is very central. And that has an impact not only on the trees, but that deforestation, which brings desertification, but also the destruction of biodiversity. Because if you cut the grass, automatically the insects that are there are being destroyed, and some of these species will not come back again. That has an impact. So you realize that the issue of energy is central to the whole business that we are talking about. So if we don't understand that, we will go the wrong way. Talking about the US and China and other may not really be the real problem. The real problem is that the poor of the world, are we bringing them the right technology electricity or electricity and energy so that we can preserve where even they are. They can even be destroying, even if we just forget about the other things, about the carbon emission that is going, we just forget about that on a daily basis. Let me just finish with an example. I gave an example when I was a Minister of Science in Rwanda. Rwanda has 12 million people now, okay? Let's say each family, if you just 12 people in a family. Mm-hmm. In general, it's 8 children and pap, dad and mom, but sometimes you can add other people in the family. So let's say 12. Let's say 1 million families. Mm-hmm. Do you think that a family of 12 use only 1 tree per week to cook? Let's say they use 1 tree per week to cook, which is 52 weeks. This means they are cutting 52 million trees per year. Is Rwanda planting 52 million trees per year? Not necessary. So you understand that is a really big challenge. So the alternative energy to the wood becomes a central issue in the tropics. And we are talking about from India to Brazil to the whole of Africa. Just take Congo. Congo is as big as Western Europe. Yeah? And take the whole forest in the Congo and Gabon and other places. And these forests are being disappearing because of the issue of energy.
Thank you. Energy being key, that's definitely one of the messages. Ladies and gentlemen, I want your opinion again. And probably, Viola, I can ask you to put up a slide that will ask exactly that. Why is youth inclusion essential for peace, security, and achieving the SDGs? Can you give us your comments after you've heard our panel speakers, after you've heard the comments in the audience and have made your own minds up? Give us some of your thinking on this one. Why is it essential? Why not? Good. Why should it not be? What else? Nothing about us without us. Taking action. Because the youth is the future. Youth is future. What else do we have here? Yes. New ideas and ways to tackle the problem. Creativity and innovation, diversity and ownership. Because we are most impacted by the world's events. Yes, all of that is true. Because the old dudes don't care anymore. Laugh out loud, yay. Since we are one of the biggest stakeholders, very true. Imagination, more actors, new ideas, fresher perspectives. Well, ladies and gentlemen, a lot comes up here. Yes. Which one did you detect? Which one did you detect, Your Excellency?
No, I'm just reading.
To fight old lazy man. All right, someone being angry here. Anger, if channeled in the right way, is great. Because we are making and creating the future. Thank you. Let me ask as well, who of you has marched on any of the Fridays for Future? Please raise your hand. All right. Yeah, some have been active. Who has marched in other demonstrations in your respective country for purposes of the SDGs? Yeah, okay, so Fridays for Future seems to be very popular. Let's switch to the next question, Viola. What do you think is the most effective way to change things? Is it to join politics? Is it to do activism, be a member of an NGO, becoming an influencer on social media, working for an international organization, or becoming a social entrepreneur? What do you think is the most effective? So it seems, ooh la la, very balanced. All of it. Yes. What gets most votes? Activism now is leading, joining politics. Joining politics is leading at par with activism. The influencer career seems to be dwindling. Social entrepreneur, yeah, want to see more of that. Ladies and gentlemen, we need that. Working in international organizations, okay. Seemingly they have to fight hard to appeal to the young audience. Politics seems to be super attractive. This is wonderful. Wow, wow, wow. And activism NGO. So that's interesting. Quarter of the audience would say it's joining politics, quarter almost activists. Very interesting. That's good. Ladies and gentlemen, we almost come to the close of the session, but I want to pose the next question, and probably it's the wrap-up one. In which movement are you most active? Is it a women's empowerment movement? Is it a nuclear weapons ban movement? Is it a climate change movement, a poverty eradication movement, or a human rights movement? And you can choose between little active and very active. So we have many women's empowerment advocates here, seemingly. Nuclear weapons, there's room for improvement. Climate change, also quite a lot, 26. Poverty eradication is almost at par with nuclear weapons ban. Human rights, we're still waiting. We have now 70 people participating. Thanks for your active participation, by the way. This is great. Interesting. This sheds a light on Europe really very much, or on the place we currently are at. Climate change has taken the lead, women's empowerment being the second. And then given the nature of the conference, the nuclear weapons ban is also doing fine. In probably other contexts, it would still need a lot of education for the people to really feel strongly about that. Human rights. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for your active participation. To wind up, let me just ask you one word wrap. I want one word from each and every one of you pertaining to what you would like the youth in this audience to remember from your presentation. Give me just one word. Or one sentence. You're allowed one sentence.
I'll take one sentence.
Yes.
Franklin Roosevelt said that we cannot always build the future for the youth, but we can build the youth for the future. I think it is very important that governments and leaders who are seated in this room take note that we have the opportunity to do hand-holding and empower the youth for tomorrow.
Bravo. One sentence.
I'm also going to take one sentence. In the words of Sarah Ahmed, like I said earlier, the fantasy of youth inclusion or inclusion could very easily be a tactic for exclusion. So all of us are very privileged in the fact that we are currently able to sit in this room and be a part of this discourse, but at the same time, we can't forget the many, many youth that we aren't including and the very real need to figure out ways to ensure that we're as inclusive as possible.
Oh, yes. One sentence.
I would say, yes, we can get engaged.
Good one. Kenya.
Yeah, I would say partnership, SDG number 17, at the bottom of the list, but so important in terms of solidarity, as we've seen from all the panel's talks today.
Bernd.
I would say it's important to talk about things, but it's also very important to do them ourselves and not only speak about them.
I have the privilege as the moderator to be the last one to speak. Ban Ki-moon says we are the first generation that can end poverty for all times. We are the last generation that can do something meaningful on climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go out there and get it done. Thank you. Thank you.